Everybody, my name is John, and thank you for checking out, what is this, part 4 of this video series about pulling eBay data and pulling it directly into Google Sheets and or Microsoft Excel so that you can have better data analysis and become a smarter buyer and or seller. In the last video, I left us with pulling in the average price, which includes the shipping information, and pulling in the high and low over the last 90 days. If you haven't had an opportunity to go check out the other videos, I would encourage you to do those. There's going to be aspects of this which we just basically breeze over because they are already found in those other videos. That said, I will just briefly mention we are using sports card data. However, if you are not into sports cards and you are just an eBay buyer or seller and you are looking to replicate this, you can change your variables to whatever you want. However, we are a sports card channel, and so therefore the information which we're going to talk about is for sports card centric data. Much like the last video, I've taken some liberties in this video, and so please feel free to pause the video and add in these headers. These will be the categories which we pull in by the end of the video. We are going to move over to the eBay example data, and I'm just going to again reference that this is our dynamic URL. We built that in part 2 of the video series, and that's really the video where we start this process. Video 1 is nothing more than just a demonstration of the original tool. We won't be making any changes here. We just will be referencing that data very similarly to what we did in the last video. Item price has changed slightly. I have pulled in a date sold header in column F. I've also added this, and this is just going to be a reference for me as we talk through this aspect of the video. But I've also added in last price through last 90 days worth of averages. So feel free to again pause the video and add these in if you are following along and building this as I'm creating the videos. The final thing, very similarly, I've taken some liberties on is created a new worksheet within our workbook called date_sold. I would encourage you to mimic that as date_sold. To add a new worksheet, you feel free to just click the plus arrow and it'll create a new worksheet. Finally, before we get started here, the XML data and the formulas, everything you need will be in the video description below. That said, we will be working with a new XML string here, this s-item _title _tag. That class is where we will find the date structure. We'll do some more substitutes. We've already done these in the last video, so I'm going to spend zero time talking about them. And then we will just briefly mention the date value formula since this is new to this video series. Okay, let's go ahead and get this kicked off. We are going to start in A5 of the date sold tab, and we are going to run the exact same import XML query that we have done in the last 2 videos. And it's an import XML, so at this point you should be familiar to the fact that we are going to then come over to the URL, and in cell A11 click the URL. Up in the functions field we're going to add a comma, and then back over to the date sold tab we will click into cell A1 where our XML data is. Again, if you haven't already pasted the XML data in cell A1, you'll need to pause and add that information at this time. We will complete our formula with a closing parentheses, and when we hit enter, we are presented with the date sold information. Okay, we've already done some substitutes in the prior video. Please make sure you've already watched that video to fully understand the substitute function. We are just going to copy the same substitute which I've already provided to you guys. Let me actually copy this to save myself some time, and we will do equals and the substitute. And I'm not going to autofill that down, but you can quickly see that we have parsed out the January 25th, 2023. That is the date when the item sold. We are going to copy this and take it down to row 100, much like we have in the other videos, and paste that function so that if we add in a search item that's got upwards of 100 sold items, we will get the dates. Okay, the final thing, this is a new query, so I'll spend just a minute of time talking about it. It's not that complex of a query, but the information, this is a string of text. And so all we've really done is parsed out the string of text. But we need to turn that string into an actual date value so that we can do things like create formulas with that date value. And we simply do that by doing an equals date value formula. We select the row of string or the string of data that we want to convert. That is B5, closing parentheses, hit enter. I'm not going to auto-populate that down because, again, I'm going to copy this and take it all the way down to row 100. Paste. And we are left with a whole bunch of value errors, which we're going to deal with here in just a moment. But you can see that now all of our dates have converted from a string, which was January 25th, comma, 2023, to a date format that we should be familiar with of month, day, year, separated by forward slashes. Let's get rid of these value errors. Let's go ahead and come up to our date value. And in between the equals, I want you to type if error. And quite honestly, I'll end up copying the if error date value, so you've probably already pasted it in this way. But if error date value B5, if this is an error, it shows that that hashtag value error, we want it to change that error to nothing. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy this back down to row 100. And when we do that, if we scroll back up to the top, we see that all of those errors are gone. We are now done with pulling in the date. Let's move the date over to the item price sheet. Very easily, we will click in cell F5, we will hit equals, and we want to mimic what is in cell C5 of the date sold sheet. So we'll simply just click into that cell and hit enter. And when we hit enter, you'll see that that date was pulled over to our import or our item price sheet. We are going to copy this and we will take it down to 100. And we now have all of our dates. Okay, now we're going to go work on the information that we will take from this workbook and move over to our main page workbook. We actually could have built this query last time. This query is simply mimicking the top total price here. The most recent is what this is always going to be, so we simply are going to mimic E5. So we'll hit equals, and then we will click in cell, M5, we are going to click in cell E5. And so pulling the data in E5 over, we now have the last cell. And when I say cell, I mean sold item, not the cell as in the spreadsheet cell. Okay, the last 7, 14, 30, 60, and 90, we will use this same query. I will paste those queries in the video description, but just very quickly, I'm going to copy this information and I will walk you through it after we copy this over. And I will go equals and paste and hit enter. And what this is basically saying is we've already talked about the if error. The if error is saying that if there wasn't a sale in the last, a sold item in the last 7 days, that we're going to leave a NA or not applicable. However, then it's saying, but we want to average if, and it's not average if, it's average ifs. The S makes that a multivariable query. And we've got multiple ranges here that we are going to be doing. So we want to average everything in column E that has a date structure, and that date structure is in the range in column F. And if that date structure is between today and minus 7 days, so it basically says, what's the date today, minus 7 days, was there a sale a sold item in that last 7 days, and there was. It was this very top query. It was sold yesterday because I'm currently recording this video on January 26th. That said, so it found our one sell or sold item. We're just going to go ahead and copy this all the way down, and to upgrade from 7 days to 14 days, we're simply going to click in cell M7, and we are going to change the 7 to 14, and we are going to change the 7 to 30 in the next cell down. In the next cell down after that, it will go from 7 to 60, and in the last 90 days, we want to change that 7 to 90. And so now over the last 90 days, if you were to look at the average of the sold items, the average was $3,305. Over the last 90 days, the average was $3,305. Just kind of a double check to ensure that we're on the right path here. That said, we now have everything that we want for today's video. Let's go ahead and move this information over to the main page. When we come into the main page here, we will simply copy the prior import range, and we will paste it. We're going to paste it in all of these. And then again, remember, we're going to have to update the cell, the reference cell. So the 4 becomes a 5, the 4 becomes a 6, the 4 becomes a 7, the 4 becomes an 8, the 4 becomes a 9, and on the last 90 days, the 4 becomes a 10. Okay, so now we have from the original sheet, from our workhorse sheet actually, our eBay data sheet where we have all of our variables, we now have the last item that was sold, what that price was. That last item happened to be sold in the last 7 days. Over the last 14 days, what is the average? Over the last 30 through 90 days, what are the averages? And so this is starting to give us data analysis that becomes very useful as we determine exactly what, as we determine trending information. But to help us with the trending information, we now want to look at the percentage increase or decrease between the last sell and the last 7 days. Has there been an increase between the last 7 days and 14 days? Has there been an increase between the last 14 and 30, so on and so forth? That'll help provide us better trending information. So let me actually turn this on. Whoops. Reset and reset. Okay. And this will be the query, and this is the final query that will be in the video description below, that we are going to put in to understand the trending information. So if we simply go equals if error, we want to keep that if error because if there is an error, we just don't want it to see any information. So equals if error. We want to go open parentheses twice, and we want to go cell C16 minus cell C17, closing parentheses, divided by cell C17, comma, and then 2 double quotation marks, because again, if it errors out, we don't want to see anything, closing quotation marks, or closing parentheses, and hit enter. And we will go ahead and autofill this down. And we are going to convert these to percentages. And really, you're not going to have anything above here. So we're going to get rid of that last price. And what we're going to see is between the last 90 days and the last 60 days, there was essentially about a 6% increase over that span in time. And then between the last 60 days and the last 30 days, there was another 6% increase. Now, there wasn't any sales in between the last 30 days and 14 days. The information stayed flat, so there wasn't an increase. But this most recent sale that we know took place yesterday on the 25th for $4,199 increased. There was an increase between the last 14 days and 7 days of 12%. And really what that is an increase of the last 30 days because there was no increase here. So you could see it as the same thing as an increase between the last 30 days and 7 days. The price went up 12%. So let me just go ahead and clear off this information here. So looking at this, you now see that we have effectively a card which is moving up in price. And that's, again, for me, that's very important to know, right? I want to understand if a card is moving higher in price or not. And actually, I meant to keep this. So I'm just going to copy and paste because I want to understand between the last price and let's say there were multiple sales in the last 7 days. I'd want to see if there was an increase, but there wasn't. There's only been one card sold in the last 7 days. So this information, and again, for right align this, and we will make the font a little bit lower. Yeah, let's actually center that. Okay, we'll center this as well. And so what this is now doing, and we can do some conditional formatting that if it's a positive number, it shows green. If it's a negative number, it shows red. We could do all sorts of things. And we might tie some of that up in the next and final video. But pretty much what you've got here in front of you is a tool that provides you with killer information if you are a buyer or a seller. All right, that's it for today's video. We'll get the next video created. It'll get posted in just a couple of days. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below. If you're still here and finding value, please hit the like button. That will continue to try and get this video out to more and more folks. Above and beyond that, if you haven't already subscribed and you like what we're doing, please hit subscribe. And if you want to know exactly when that next video gets posted, go ahead and hit the notification bell and you will be notified when we post. For now, I'm just going to wrap this up by saying thanks for joining us and we'll talk to you in the next one.